Are you tired of struggling to build a winning team in your business? Imagine having the insights of a World Series coach at your fingertips. Today, we're unlocking the secrets of championship level leadership with Trent Clark, CEO of Leadershipity and author of Leading Winning Teams. Get ready to transform your approach to team building and skyrocket your business success. Tune in to discover how to turn your team into MVPs. This episode is brought to you by Entrepreneurs Organization Minnesota and the Entrepreneurs Rally at the Mall of America on May 8th, 2025. Get your ticket now at entrepreneursrally.org. That's entrepreneursrally.org.
Entrepreneurs, it's time to rise. May 8th, the day to realize your dreams, your goals, your enterprise. At the Entrepreneurs Rally, watch your business fly. 500 strong, we converge as one. Rally 13, it's time for the run. Rally 13, team where visions soar. Innovation knocking on every door. Connect, learn, grow, and so much more. Entrepreneurs Rally, success is what's in store. Damon, John, Matthew, Pollard too, sharing wisdom tried and true. Roundtable mentoring insights anew. JW Mario, you shine through. Make connections, drive your quest. Building dreams of the very best. Rally for new team where visions soar. Innovation knocking on every door. Connect, learn, grow, and so much more. Entrepreneurs Rally, success is what's in store. From dawn till dusk, a day of power. Networking and panels at every hour. Curated connections, skills to empower. Your business will bloom like a flourishing flower. Rally 3 where dreams take flight. Innovation burning bright. Join the journey, reach new heights. Entrepreneurs Rally, future's looking bright.
Welcome to this episode of Uncharted Entrepreneurship. Today I have Trent Clark. He is the CEO of Leadershipity and has just come out with a new book. I'm going to let Trent give you that. Trent, go ahead, do an introduction for yourself. Tell us about your new book, Leading Winning Teams, and maybe one of your passions in life.
Yeah, for me, thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here, Brent. Excited about the book, Leading Winning Teams, just came out in August. And of course, the Audible will come out November 12th. And one of the passions in my life is, right people in the right seats right now.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that's right up the EOS alley, right people, right seat. GWC them, right? If we're going to use them.
Yeah.
Great. So Trent, before we get started in content, we're going to talk a little bit about your book. We'll talk about some leadership ideas and some things you've gone through. And even as a baseball coach, I'm always interested in that. And we'll just exclusively talk about the Minnesota Twins, maybe bring up 1987, 1991, which were pretty good years for us.
Good years.
But first, you have volunteered to be part of the Free Joke Project. I have a super funny joke for you today. Just give me a rating 1 through 5. So here we go. My friend Jack thinks he can communicate with vegetables. Jack and the beans talk.
Nice dad joke. That's pretty decent right there. That's going to take a second for people to get. I'm going to give that a 4.
All right, thank you. Yeah, they're all thinking jokes, and that was a dumb thinking joke. But anyways, we'll leave it at that. So Trent, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got where you are today.
Yeah, CEO of Leadershipity. I currently run like 3 brands and companies, all in different spaces. STR, short-term rental, we own and manage those. the leadership development firm, which is a lot like EOS. We build and double EBITDA on companies very quickly. And then I have an NIL education company, which is so hot right now in college sports. It's crazy. And now high school sports, it's going to go mad. And so I've spoke all over the world, 17 different countries. I love it. I just spoke for EO Pittsburgh for their new member drive, and just a ton of fun. And I love the entrepreneur environment. Most people know me, Brent, as you said, like, 3 World Series, I coached for 13 years in professional baseball, coaching for the Tigers, Indians, and Angels. I got to coach with Coach Saban and Coach Izzo at Michigan State as a strength coach there. So I've had a lot of fun on that. My passion right now is really, really getting teams aligned, getting people to understand how they can operate better and build a winning team. And I did a TEDx called The Pain Exchange, talking about the pain of discipline versus regret. And I highlight that in the book through some exercises. So that's where I spend most of my time, with just helping people get better.
That's great. Yeah, I'm a big believer in pain exchange. So I'm a marathon runner. I just ran Chicago this last weekend, and in the marathon, you hit pain, and you have to have that will to finish. And then I think the part that I'm still working on, and this was number 29 for me, but the part that I'm still working on is that getting that pain aside. It's all mental, right? Keep moving. And I always tell I do some run coaching, and I tell my run coach, or my coachees, or whatever you want to call them, that it's 90% mental and the other 15% is in your head. I usually say that around 20 miles.
Yeah, if you haven't read like You Can't Hurt Me to understand how the power of the mind is so powerful over the body, it's crazy. I also like the longtime owner of the Twins, right? He's featured here, Harvey McKay, on my book here. Harvey said a quote in one of his books that I really loved. He said, "Everybody wants to win the day of the game, but few are willing to prepare for it." And I love that, because you as a marathoner, it's this day for that day. And you have hundreds of this days, training, eating right, resting, recovering, getting ready for that day on the day you run the Chicago Marathon, right? There's a lot of this days for that days. And that's how discipline works. It's the discipline to do everything this day so you get the opportunity on that day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the Pullheads that own the Twins still. McKay might own part of the Wild. But anyway,
does Harvey still own? Yeah, Harvey's got to be in his 90s, right?
He was part of the Wild team, or the Wild ownership. I don't know if he is anymore.
Was he?
It's always it's been, they call it the Pullhead family has owned the Twins since I think since before in the 80s, yeah, when they won their first World Series.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Carl was part of the big contraction talks, where they tried to contract the MLS and get rid of some teams, and he put out Minnesota to be one of those teams because he'd get a big payout. But I think that the Pullhead family in the long term has done much better by having the Twins in as a team still. So anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, Harvey owned a big envelope company there in Minnesota, right? He owned that.
That's
group,
right.
And he wrote, of course, he's more famous for the books, right? How to Swim with the Sharks, beware the naked man who offers you a shirt, all those good ones, right? Like, he had great titles.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned earlier just the right person, right seat. Tell us that concept and why did that come to the top of mind today?
Well, I like the quote from Bill Belichick, longtime Patriot head coach and longtime NFL coach, who said, I'll know I have a great team when everyone knows their role and they're doing it. And, for me, when I go into most organizations, Brent, there's probably 25% or more who don't really know their role. It's not well defined for them. And then there's another time, where I go in and probably there's 40 to 50% of the people who know their role and they're not doing it. And no one's holding them accountable. Like, it's crazy that people can show up every day and do even 60, 70% of their role. I mean, can you imagine, Brent, if you paid me $200,000 and I only did 50% of the role, and then you're like, well, how about I just give you 100 because you're kind of showing up halfway here. And no one ever wants the half salary, right? They want the full salary, but they don't give the full contribution and own their responsibility. And owning your responsibility doesn't mean I have to do everything, right? It means I got to surround myself with a good team, delegate the responsibilities inside the organization and the key team members that I'm hiring to surround myself with that can help me achieve the results of my role, at 100% every time and contribute to the organization. And when people really get that, companies really start firing.
Yeah, I think there's a two-sided table, and it's usually the employee doesn't understand that importance of being accountable and what you're accountable to. If you aren't doing your role or you don't have KPIs, and in EOS, everybody should have some kind of a number. If you don't have a responsibility to anything, then it's easy for the employer to come back to you and say you're not fulfilling whatever you're supposed to be fulfilling. So there is a responsibility on both sides. I think it's definitely on the employer to apply whatever expectations they have on the employee. But in the cases where employers don't understand or don't know, and I think you mentioned, maybe higher income people are one of those sometimes, that if the employer doesn't feel as though they are fulfilling what they're obligated to fulfill, they're just going to let them go. And if you don't have any metrics behind that, it's very easy to make that decision as an employer.
Well, I think it's a great point from an employee standpoint. Like, hey, if there's a measurement on how I contribute, no one gets rid of contributors. Like, everyone wants more. You and I, Brent, as coaches and leaders and business owners, we've said this at least 20 times in our life. Oh, Diana, she's the best. Love her. I'll take 10 more just like her. What are we actually saying? We don't need a clone of Diana. We need the right attitude, the effort, the attention to detail, the results in her KPIs, like exceeding her number. Like, her number's a minimum, not a maximum. She's not going to trying to hit it. Every number that she is measuring is well beyond the minimum standard. And so I think it's a great way for employees to recognize, like, hey, this is how I contribute. This is how I show up really well. And I think the other thing that's really important for employees who want to advance, who feel like, wow, Brent, I could be part of your executive team and I should be in that. And you're like, great. The only thing Brent can measure them on is how they're doing in their current role. Like, oh, I could be one day the vice president over all of sales in North America for Starbucks. And I could be great at that job. But today, I'm running a store in West Michigan, one of 12 in our district, and my next step is to become the district manager. Well, if my store is the 14th out of the 15 stores in West Michigan in the district, I'm probably not being considered for district manager, right? Like, because they're considering the people who run the top 2 stores, not only in our district, but they're probably also considering the top 2 people in the neighboring districts who might be upgraded and say, hey, you could come over and run this district. It's close enough to you that you could come over and do it. And you've done so well at running your store. We'd love to see you run the district as well as your store. Meanwhile, Trent at number 14 in the district is not getting an opportunity to run anything because I'm not managing very well right where I'm at. So I tell a lot of people, like, be present, like, be where your feet are at, right? Like, this is where you've got to show up and contribute right where you're at and be the best you can be.
Yeah. What do you say to the business owner? Let's say it's store number 13, and he's hearing from his manager all the time, all these excuses about why their store isn't performing. Yeah. And they're not actually giving you anything that's concrete or objective. They're just giving you some subjective things. Do you lean in and just start applying more and more KPIs or more and more objective criteria that they can then perform on?
Yeah, that's really fair, right? Like, if I'm going to have the 14th ranked store because of geography, this store's doesn't have the same level of, bandwidth and the right corner of town that everyone's passing through, and it doesn't have as much sales. Great. I certainly understand that. But let's just go, we've got a historical number on this store. So let me run this store at a greater and higher percentage than this store has ever run. Now that may only put me in number 8 in the 15 districts, but how I'll overcome it to become the district manager is I will take a store and I will have gained and created 2 times the value of whatever that store has ever done. And now it may still not be number 1 or 2, but they can see the improvements I've made inside that store that has never been ranked inside the top 8 and go, wow, this is crazy. This store has actually never finished higher than 12 in our district. How did Trent do that? Let's look at that and let's look at what's going on, because that's just as good, if not a better story than, hey, I'm running the number 1 store and it's always been number 1.
Yeah, so I mean, it brings you back to a lot of ideas around just the percentage increase, and not just looking at raw numbers, but looking at how well you're performing according to the numbers you have. If we take a sports analogy, in baseball, if you're hitting the ball 1 out of 3 times, you're incredibly successful.
Yeah.
And if you're taking that into a business analogy, you could be losing, right? So that's a good indication of like applying the numbers in the right way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're exactly right. You hit a ball in play for a hit 1 out of 3 times in that league. That's worth $25 million a year, right? Like, I mean, and everyone else considered 33% is failing, right? But the context is this is a David and Goliath story, right? It's Brent's pitching and he gets 8 of his closest friends to help get Trent out, the batter, right? And it's like 1 versus 9, and I'll even add sideline Sam and sideline Steve, as you got the first and third baselines. You've got 11 defenders out there, because no matter how hard you hit it, if you hit it foul and it doesn't go in play, it'll never be a hit, but you can still make an out. So there's a lot of challenges that stand up against that hitter. So as David takes his little sling out and throws his little stone out, listen, if he's successful 1 out of 3, it's worth a lot of money. So in context, man, if I only made 1 out of 3 payments to my banker, he'd probably be coming from my house, right? So like, it's all relative to how we're going to do that. So we have to take it in context, and we have to understand our numbers.
How do you apply what you've learned in the professional sports world to business? And I've heard a lot of people talk about that, but what is your sort of high level application of how you've gotten good feedback from sports and then applied it to business?
Well, there's so many things that cross over, Brent. It's amazing. It's literally what leading winning teams is all about. It is literally about all the things I've learned from athletics and sport that now transition into leading your church, being a contributor to society. Like, what are all these valued things I got? And first of all, the first one is probably the most important, which is, a discipline, right? Sports gives us discipline. Sports gives us, this is what we're going to learn. And we get coaching and feedback. So we get coachability, which is a huge asset. So if I'm going to hire anybody inside my organization, I want like ACEs. So I want this card, right? So sports is great at giving you coachability, because you get the best in the world in pro sports. And then you get the best coaches too, and they come alongside you and give you feedback and guide you. It always throws me, Brent, when I run into someone how we're coaching, and my organization goes into an organization led by a 45-year-old, or let's say a 47-year-old who hasn't had a coach since they left high school sport, and or high school music, whatever it is. That's 30 years without a coach. Like, that's crazy. So having a coach and being coachable is really a big deal. The next one is hyper learning, right? It's if you can't learn fast and adapt and then execute on what you have to adapt to, that is a huge skill. Adaptability is one of those huge itties that we have to have, and hyper learning is in like 3 real true environments I've seen in my lifetime. Pro sports, if you can't learn fast and you can't execute, you die. They don't need you. You're fired. Literally in special forces, you have to adapt fast, or you literally could die, or worse, help facilitate death with your team members. I mean, it's awful. Everyone's hands are in each other, right? So adaptability becomes that. And then of course, entrepreneurs are that third group, because if you're an entrepreneur and you have to always be vying out your SWOT analysis. How do we adjust? Where are our strengths? Where are our weaknesses? Where are threats to our organization? How do we adapt and look for that and remove obstacles and identify opportunities for us to move forward? So that's a huge one. Then there's the big R word where athletes really understand responsibility. Like, you are responsible for your results. So no one else is coming. I'm not a victim. I've got to take my responsibility for my results. And so when we have our role, responsibility becomes a big thing. I'm responsible for my role. They've laid it out. Now I have to take that responsibility, and how do I get that done? That's a huge thing for me. It's right back to my podcast, Winners Find a Way. I love the quote, winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way to win, from the 4 disciplines of execution. So when I see that, these are what entrepreneurs do so well. This is why I surround myself with people like this in my life. It's so great because they're solutions minded, right? They will take responsibility. Wow, here's the data, and we're not winning. We have to do something different in order to get more sales in this category, to get our message out better, to hire more people to get this done. So we adjust to that very well, and winners find a way. So we have coachability, adaptability, responsibility, and then in sports, you really get the fact of time management and how time is your friend, and taking care of yourself is so important, and your body's your temple, and your body actually is creating your tool to compete. So our body and mind are so busy, are so critical. So we have those 4 key things. We're always training physically, mentally, emotionally, and then morally as well. And that was, one of John Wooden's big one. Like, you've got to get those 4 things trained up well, and they all got to be moving together up. It's not like you can go, it's not like a stereo system where you can go, I'm going to turn the treble up here and I'm going to drop the bass to 0, because one category falls out and it's all of a sudden a gap, and people will come in and attack you in that gap, right? All of a sudden you are up for threat. So those 4 things have to be trained up. If you really have true aces in your organization, and athletes become true aces because they have coachability, they have adaptability, they take their responsibility, and they do it over and over again, Brent, proving dependability. And that's when you've got a card, and that's when you've got the right people in the right seats.
Do you think a lot of budding entrepreneurs, or people that are moving from a job into a paycheck to an entrepreneur, that often miss out that responsibility, and they don't have anybody to blame but themselves, and then they may fail as an entrepreneur? Is that something that that has to be in yourself, not to blame somebody, because you can't blame anybody if something fails?
I think there's 2 sides of that, right? One is the budding entrepreneurs have all been through challenges, right? They've been through oftentimes horrific, tragic things. They've been through terrible things, and pro athletes are very similar in that, because the hard work and discipline it takes, it pales in comparison to things they've been to before. So when you do hard things, you get used to being uncomfortable, right? And so when I think someone takes a leadership role, they realize I am responsible, and they have this concept of I will, right? I will take the trash out because our cleaning system is not able to work. They're on strike. No one's coming to clean up the office. I will take out the garbage. I will come in early. I will call that hard client and see if we can get them back. I will go in and have that tough conversation. I will go to our team and help them get through this challenging time. Like, these are what we're looking for on our teammates. But as entrepreneurs, we have to be the people to say I will, and then we look for other people that help us along the way that are also I will folks. So for people who don't get that responsibility, they have those losing behaviors, right? They have 4 losing behaviors. They have, first of all, excuses. Then they have blame. Then they quit when it gets tough. It's a terrible losing behavior, is quit when it gets hard. And then the worst one is really what I call the ostrich method, Brent. Is like, they bury their head in the sand and they ignore the data. Like, oh no, we're not losing, it's not bad. Like, no. Like, we're losing and it's not going great. And if we don't fix it, everyone's going to lose their job. And like, we've got to have sustainability around here. And when we ignore that data, like, you're just putting off the inevitable, and it makes for a long death march.
Yeah. The part where the responsibility is there, then the dependability, and the last one of the things I think that it's hard as you grow as an entrepreneur is that letting go of the vine is as an EOS term or as an attraction term. How do you help people? And that's the hardest part, right? That's the hardest part is adding employees. And I think looking at EOA, the accelerator program, the hardest part is scaling the people part of it. How do you help coach people in that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to live off your values, right? Like, because we need people who are going to come alongside and be able to be in a position where they can grow, where they can develop, and we want to have a lot of trust. If you've ever seen the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team, right, by Patrick Lencioni, it's first trust, right? That is the foundation. We have to have trust. Then we have productive conflict. Then we have accountability, right, amongst each other, and we keep going right up to results, right? And so we don't get results until we get the first two right. And conflict is part of being in work. I mean, if we never had any conflict, Brent, we'd probably need half the people that we do have, right? Like if we have no conflict, so like I can automate everything, but we need humans to deal with the challenges and be solutions minded, and we need to operate inside our values. And so I love Ted Lasso. I love that whole series. And for the people who have trouble letting go of that vine, quote unquote, and letting your team members really uphold that, you and I have both seen this where sometimes the best thing that's ever happened to a leader in an organization is they had to disappear for 3 months. They either got ill, someone in their family got ill, and it was like, hey, we've worked all this thing up to this time. You guys just got to go do it without me. I've got to go take care of my mother. I've got to deal with this in my life. And whew, they're out. And they come back 120, 150 days later to an extremely better organization, right? And they're like, holy crap, like I had no idea that maybe I was the bottleneck in this thing. Because if you have trust in your team, and I like the Ted Lasso where everybody puts their hand up like we believe in each other. You have to believe in your team and you have to trust them. And if you don't believe and trust them, you won't delegate. You won't give them anything because I'm the only one who can do it around here, Brent. Like, come on, that's so not true. You've hired high quality people. You got to believe in them and trust them to get that done. And if you don't have that, you'll be holding on the vine, and your growth is limited, because if you're holding on to it so tight, they're not growing, and that's gonna be an early exodus for your top talent, right, Brent? Because if you're my best guy and I'm trying to be like, oh man, Brent, we got to keep Brent motivated around here. Like I got to keep giving Brent the next thing, because every time I give him something, he knocks it out of the ballpark. It's amazing how good it is. And I'm like, whoa, next challenge. This was almost too easy for Brent. So I got to keep pushing that envelope, because I'm a carrot guy. I'm not a stick like, well, Brent, if you don't double it next week, then we're not going to give you your bonus, because that's stick crap, right? That's not going to be so effective as a motivator. But because I show, wow, I believe and trust in you, I want to push you out to your potential and keep challenging you to do hard things, because that keeps growing in you. And listen, if we're all growing together, what's happening to the organization? Just by osmosis and by default, the organization's growing, because we have better people growing inside of it, and it's just creating capacity all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big Otani and compared to the Dodgers, compared to the White Sox this year, you see two ends of the spectrum, right? And one, and by the way, do you think Ted Lasso is going to come onto the White Sox team next year as their head coach to try to save them?
Yeah. I would love to see. Yeah, that might be season 4. Ted's back, and now he's taking on baseball, and he's got the Black Sox of Chicago. Yeah. He's got to turn around a program that nearly set the all-time record for losses in a season, and it's time for a turnaround. But they do need something, right? We need something more, and we need to get something stronger there. And man, leadership's a big deal, and it's not all about personnel. The personnel at that level is so fractional. The difference between them, it's really going to come down to how well you can get your leadership to continue to help each one of those folks grow and develop, because that's how you change organizations.
Yeah, right there is the quote of the interview, getting those leaders to help develop that talent. And baseball is a great example of there's only so much talent in the league. There's so much talent outside of the league, and the best ones bubble up. Trent, we have a few minutes left, and we have so many more things we could talk about today. As we end the podcast, I gave everybody a chance to do a shameless plug about anything they'd like. What would you like to plug today?
Yeah, I'll just plug the book, man. Like, thank you. Join the book. Love to have you a part of Leading Winning Teams. Like, take a read. Love your review of it. It's a great walkthrough my kind of career and my journey to excellence, where I talk a little bit about this period of my life from a sophomore to my till the time I was 27 years old, about 11-year span, where I either played, coached in 7 different championships, 3 at high school state championships, 2 at the college and the national championships, and then 2 World Series. And all the time I'm just, I'm auditing, like, wow, in this journey of excellence, why do you win? Why do you lose? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? All those things. And we know, Brent, as leaders, it's really about not knowing everything. It's often about asking the right questions of the right people. And, there's so many good people out there. Get a good team around you, start asking the right questions, and then, position yourself for growth, because that's where it's going to be. And as you talk about that with the Dodgers and the White Sox, the Dodgers have positioned themselves for championships. They've positioned themselves to continue growing, and the White Sox have not. They've put themselves limiting their ceiling of growth, and that'll change. They'll figure it out. They'll get better, but it's going to take a minute, and it's hard. But for everybody out there, yep, I speak all over the world. Love to have a chat. You can reach me at Trent@leadershipity.com, and I'm on LinkedIn everywhere. I'm pretty easy to find on social. So I speak all over the world and coach a lot of teams. So if you're looking for that, I'd love to talk with you.
That's great. I'll make sure I get that into the show notes. Trent Clark, the CEO of Leadershipity. Thank you so much for being here today.
You bet. Thanks, Brad, for having me.
Uncharted Entrepreneurship is a production of Content Basis, LLC. Copyright 2023. You can find more award-winning content at contentbasis.io. And that wraps up the latest edition of Uncharted Entrepreneurship. Bold tales from entrepreneurial trailblazers. I'm your host, Brent Peterson, signing off after an incredible fireside chat with one of our intrepid trailblazing guests. Their first-hand perspective on conquering the unexplored wilds of business is just a taste of the rare wisdom you'll discover from pioneering entrepreneurs on this show. I also invite you to join me each week for insider commentary on the startup scene and digital marketing landscape on my Talk Commerce podcast. You can find Talk Commerce wherever you download podcasts or go to talk-commerce.com. I'd be grateful if you left a review and rating for Uncharted Entrepreneurship to help more bold founders find their way to game-changing insights that empower ventures to transform communities. This is your host, Brent Peterson, signing off for now. I'll see you around the virtual campfire next episode as we embark on another adventure into the great entrepreneurial unknown.